just to give us a slight indication about the colors, in other words, for us to understand the significance of why the Torah has to mention colors. For those of you in the dress industry, it might be of assistance. After all, isn't the Torah to assist us in whichever which way? It is not just some form of religiosity. Tchelet, blue, Shehia Malchut. That is the color that makes things manifested. But Va'argaman, but purple, Shehu Zeir Anpin. Shehem Tzvayim Shel Shem HaKadosh HaNikra Shem Maleh. These two colors, when combined, in other words, it's a good idea, it appears from the Zohar, to combine blue with purple somehow. I don't know anything about colors or how that would match in styles. But what emerges from this combination, says the Zohar, is Havaya Elokim. Shehavaya, which means the tetragrammaton, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yesod Argaman. That provides a manifestation of the energy intelligence of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the highest level of the force that becomes manifested in our realm. Velokim, Yesod Techelet. V'zeh sod she'lavesh bo ha'kohen ha'gadol lavo el ha'kodesh tolat shani. There's another color. Hu tzeva adom keneged gvura. Utchelet v'agaman keneged malchut and teferet. Shein klulim b'kol ela ha'saveim. ומשום שהכהן גדול מתלבש בלבושים של צבעים האלו, היה נכנס לפנים ואין דוחים אותו לחוץ. In other words, if you could somehow gather together these three colors, I don't know how and what the combination is best served. However, know that when these three colors are merged together, they provide the unification of the three columns, which means Zeir Anpin, Malchut, and Gevurah. Once the Kohen became enclosed in this kind of combination, they no longer, meaning the forces, and we know there are forces out there. The problem is, like I was discussing that with someone this evening, we think that when we're unlucky, because we were unlucky, and when things go right, we're lucky. But we know that is completely condemned by the Zohar. Say you're lucky, like it happened without reason, and if you're unlucky, it happened without reason. That does not exist. That does not exist. In other words, we are the creators. We are the creators of our own actions and our own results. So if things do not go as they did, it is because there are forces around us that we did not know, or we were ignorant as to how we can control these evil forces that we know must exist. Like we know today, you don't begin something on a Monday and you don't begin something on a Wednesday. If you do begin something on a Monday and a Wednesday, you have injected the energy intelligence of chisaron, lack. In other words, whatever you have done, you have left an opening for anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Something like Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it'll go wrong. Why will it go wrong? Because you provided an opening. But I didn't know that Monday and Wednesday was not a good day to start things. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Therefore, to be sure that we can protect ourselves, we must create as many and as is conceivably possible to create as many of the positive conditions around us and not permit any form of fragmentation or lack to enter into our own particular domain. Therefore, says the Zohar, once the Kohen was enclosed in this kind of frame of reference, this kind of box, says the Zohar, there is no force existing in the universe which could push him aside. There was no vacuum. There was no empty space that something could go wrong with him. All right. How does a person create this kind of similar situation? Oh, before that, we wanted to discuss, and the Zohar gets into that too, this idea of clothing. Where did it originate? Where did it originate that clothing have an effect upon people? You know, there's an old saying: you don't wear clothing of people that met misfortune. Never. Not wear clothing of people that met misfortune. If you know, unless you're strong enough that it won't affect you. Unless you're strong enough that it won't affect you. He says, Boarei, Adam Arishon, Adam, Kishahaya b'Gan Eden, when he was in Gan Eden, Haya meluvash b'levush ke'en shel mala. What was his clothing? What was his clothing? He had the kind of clothing that was adaptable for the frame of reference that he was in. He was in a frame of reference that death could not occur, that he could not undergo any misfortune. In fact, he was enclosed with this translucent, what is left today is called a nail, over the entire body. It was not the meat of the body. He did not have that degree of consciousness. Therefore, he was considered as being in the level of Ze'ir Anpin. Because of that level, it's like an astronaut. To be suitable, it's a pun, but suitable, coming from the word suit, always depending on what you're wearing. Suitable. Why do we use the word suitable? Other words we can use, but it has been accepted the word suitable kind of indicates a connection. You're suitable for something. Meaning you should wear the right clothing. An astronaut, for him to exist in outer space, what we mean outside the realm of gravitation, the gravitational force of Earth, he must wear other clothing. He must be suitable. Now, Adam did not have to go up into outer space so to have longevity, which we know that anyone who could live in outer space, even today they know, your life can be prolonged by living in outer space. Why? Because like we said, the Jews did not have to undergo and create new clothing all the time because they lived in that frame of reference of the Mishkan. They had that kind of protection against degeneration, both in health, because no one got sick. No one got sick in the Midbar. The time came for a person to die, he closed his eyes, and that was the end. There was no illness. There was, even the clothing, as I said before, did not even wear out. They had that complete protection of that outer space connection, which is called Ze'ir Anpin. There's a code for it. It's called the space of Ze'ir Anpin. Adam Rishon, before the sin, before the eating of the apple, had the adaptable clothing that permitted him to exist in that kind of environment. What is it? V'hu levush shel or elyon. It was clothing of a levush, which was an or, as I said, a translucent.
Was it hard like a nail?
That we're not sure. That we're not sure if it was hard like a nail or it was soft, but of a translucent method, model.
Was Nebuchadnezzar also had that? Or Nimrod, I'm sorry. That had the...
Nimrod, you mean the clothing he had? Not his body.
Scales, he had scales all over his body. Was it similar?
He had the clothing of Adam Rishon that Esav killed him. Again, another idea that Esav, remember, that was the clothing that Yaakov put on. The clothing that Yaakov put on, which belonged to Esav, which Esav acquired when he murdered Nimrod. Maybe, I guess that's what you talk about again. Another idea of suitable clothing. The animal kingdom feared him, and that's why when Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav, he forgot to take his clothing, those clothing. And so the reason he delayed his return, or his return was delayed, was because the animals he had to now go out and hunt the animal. Whereas Yaakov went out with his clothing, and immediately all the animals gathered, and he took whatever he had to do, and so he immediately returned. In fact, his father asked him, "Boy, you came back really, that quick." But that was the clothing. Again, clothing indicating that there is an intelligence in clothing. Now, not all clothing contained that kind of intelligence. They gave us a little idea concerning colors, but that's not all. I guess the manufacturer should begin learning a little Kabbalah and learning how to, if there's a purpose in that, on how to create a better design. And that was that was Yaakov. And again, clothing, you remember, he created a kind of suit of clothes for Yosef. Clothes play an important role in the Torah. But it plays an important role because we're not talking about how beautiful the suit of clothes were, but what kind of energy, intelligence was activated, was aroused in that suit of clothing. But when he was driven out of Gan Eden, then he went out of the outer space connection. He was no longer in outer space, so he would suffer if he did not have the proper kind of clothing that was suitable for this frame of reference. Makatuv, Vayas Hashem Elokim la'adam v'lishto kasnot or vayalbishem. Hashem, the Lord, had to provide him with a new suit of clothes. He now went into another dimension. He went into another frame of reference. Mitkila haya kasnot or. Before, it was a garment that was light. The force was ever present. The force lit up like a neon sign. It lit up. It was light. Shel or elyon. Mishum shebegan Eden haya mishamish bo or elyon hameir. Because over there in Gan Eden, where Adam Arishon existed, that was the adaptable kind of clothing. However, what happens if he didn't get that kind of suit of clothes? He could not enter. He would be burnt up. The same way as an astronaut, if he walks out, if he's out of his capsule, out of a space shuttle, he could not exist unless he dressed in clothes suitable for that environment. But the moment that Adam was driven out, Misham, then he had to have another suit of clothes. So, this aspect of dress, while for the most part, we dismiss it as something important, to whatever level, one can, shall I say, arouse or activate internal energy, and we might think it's not so important. The answer is that is a far cry and a mistake from what we consider to be a security shield. It doesn't mean a vest that can prevent someone shooting at you, a bulletproof vest. We're not talking of that kind. We're talking about that when you wear the right suit of clothes, and there are certain Orthodox Jews that walk around with black clothes. Why do they walk around with black? Maybe today they walk around with black clothes as a uniform. That might be true also. But let's say originally, I believe they felt that this was their kind of protection. Then you had the Ari and Rabbi Shimon. They walked around with white clothes on Shabbat, let's say, and on Chagim. They felt that this was the kind of protection. In other words, colors always demonstrated a kind of something. It had an effect on not only on the individual, but also on his environment. Okay? וכבר עמדנו שמעשים טובים של אדם או שעושה בעולם הזה, אלו המעשים מושכים אור של זיו העליון. The suit of clothes that will create a security shield by virtue of the fact that it's a suit of clothes and it has the right colors. But also it must include because we do not have the constant security of a Bet HaMikdash. We do not have the constant security of the Kohen dressed in the clothing that he does. Says the Zohar, then what other alternative is there for man to create this kind of security shield along with the proper clothing? Along with the proper clothing. Masim Tovim, says the Zohar. Again, what is Mechael? Sharing. The sharing concept. If we conduct ourselves in a way of sharing, and the greatest sharing is called Masim Tovim. Staka, charity, is one aspect. More important than staka is giving of yourself. See, because the easiest sharing method that the Torah prescribed for us is charity. But for one to give of himself, and showing a concern for the world, showing a concern for the environment, showing a concern for society, showing a concern for an individual, that is the kind of Masim Tovim that also will encourage and create, says the Zohar, a Ziv Elyon, a light, an upper light or a supernal light that will act as a form of protection. Now we come to another section, which is even more of a mystery. And the ephod. Some call the ephod an apron. He wore an apron. Then he also wore a breastplate. This becomes interesting. The breastplate. Why does the breastplate become interesting? And we'll soon discuss briefly the details of this apron and the breastplate. Is that there was an Urim V'Tumim, something called an Urim V'Tumim, that acted as a computer. In other words, if someone had a question, someone had a problem, and looked for a solution, he would come to the Kohen. The Kohen can activate this computer. I call it a computer, but the Torah calls this the Urim V'Tumim. Outflashed combinations of letters, and the answer proceeded from there on in, just like a computer. It was a literal printout. This is also part of the Kohen's clothing. This becomes a little interesting. But what of interest? I mean, we don't have it today. Or so we think. But anyway, we think we don't have it today. Where is the Urim V'Tumim? Where is the Kohen's apron? Where is his breastplate? Not available. In fact, the Vatican claims they have it. According to the Zohar, it's a duplication. It's not the real thing. Because the real thing is still where it always was. Back in Jerusalem, in the Holy Temple, that still exists. Although some can say, where is it? We don't see it, right? We don't see it. And if I don't see it, it does not exist. Says Rabbi Shimon, oh, it exists. You think it doesn't exist, know that your eyes can be a complete deception. Like the scientists today, uncertainty. You think you see what you see, and 99% of what we think we see, we really don't see, and what we don't see is probably what we do see. But this is what happened. What is the structure of this? And so it says in chapter 28, and I don't want to go into the details. I would suggest after the class that you read it. It says in the ephod, again, color scheme. And it says you should take two onyx stones. And so it's not by coincidence that Karen decided we must have an onyx bima, right? Insisted we must have an onyx bima. And when you're dealing with an air sign, they don't stop. So we traveled out of Mexico City like 200 miles and found a mine and found some nut that would create the bima the way we wanted it, right? In any event, it says, thou shalt take two onyx stones and grave on them the names of the children of Israel. 6 of their names on the one stone, and the name of the 6 that remain on the other stone, according to their birth. According to their birth. Okay? So now we have, let me just read 11 for you. With the work of an engraver in the stone, like the engravings of a signet. You know what a signet is? It creates an indent. No, it was engraved. But why does the in Power of the Alphabet I go into what it means by chotam? Chotam actually means in Hebrew chatimah, a seal. Why can't you just say it was engraved? Doesn't everyone understand what engraving means? I mean, does the Torah have to add a couple of more words to say the same thing? But I go through all of that in the Power of the Alphabet, so I don't have to repeat it here. Betuchei chotam, and he kind of goes over it again, and put these two stones on the shoulder pieces of the ephod, to be stones of memorial for the children of Israel. To be a memorial. In other words, that we should never forget the children of Jacob. Is that the reason? I mean, that's what the Torah says. So we should not forget, as if it didn't appear, if the names didn't appear. And what happens if it appears in the Bet HaKnesset? I mean, what happens if it appeared on some wall? Someone wants to make a picture of the names of the tribes, and he didn't have to wear it anymore. But in any event, that's what it said. L'zikaron livnei Yisrael. In other words, it's forever. Forever. What's forever? You mean that we have to remember their names? And here's where the Zohar will provide us with something that we didn't know. Kvar amidu amar Rabbi Yosef, ephod v'choshen haya ke'echad. The choshen and the ephod, they're really both the same thing. They're both the same. Ki ephod hisod malchut. The apron, or the lower part is Zeir Anpin, because I didn't go into the details of why the ephod is on the bottom part, and the breastplate is at the breastplate. Why is it called the breastplate? You know why? Because that's where he wore it. But we can't use those excuses anymore, right? We can't use that reasoning that because he wore it there, That's why we call it breastplate. We call the holy city of Jerusalem holy because the temple was there. Never. There had to be a metaphysical reasoning for why he would wear that here and then give it the name breastplate. There had to be a preceding reason why we would call it breastplate. Why? Because the breastplate was located at Zeir Anpin. Those of you who know what that means, it's the upper part of the Magen David. There are two parts to the Magen David. Two triads. Two, let's say, divisions. Two frames of reference of triads. If you are not familiar with the Magen David, with the Star of David, then you can see that there are 3 on top and 3 below. The three on top is called the Zeir Anpin frame of reference, which we refer to as the outer space connection. No fragmentation. Immortality. Remember where he was before, Adam Harishon was before the sin. And then you have, unfortunately, the world that we exist, the world of fragmentation. So why is it called breastplate? And why was it placed there? We didn't yet study what was in the breastplate. That is Zeir Anpin, because the breast is the upper section of the Star of David, the Magen David, and that is called Zeir Anpin. The breast has an energy intelligence on the physical level. Now, what keeps this part of the body functioning in the way it does, because this is the purer part, right? You have the heart, the lungs. It is only in the Malchut, the lower level, is where you've got all the garbage stuff, right? That's called our world, the world of garbage, the world of fragmentation, the world of suffering, misfortune, etc. So the ephod was located below because it directed itself towards that level of consciousness, our world. The breastplate is Zeir Anpin. V'midu ki b'makom shehu kiyum, dahaynu b'makom sheyesh mochin shleimim, omdim kol elu yud beit avanim nosot shemot b'nei Yisrael. Now, what happened in the Choshen HaMishpat, the breastplate? It says that it was the work of skillful workmen, the work of the ephod that shall make, of gold. I'm sorry. You had 4 squares. It shall be, and double. A span shall be the length thereof. That's the size. And thou shalt set in the setting of stones 4 rows of stones. 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in each row, it enumerates stones. Precious and semi-precious stones. Again, we could spend probably a year if I would accumulate all the information of the Zohar and all works of Kabbalah on stones, right? Because did you ever ask yourself the question, where did they get all these stones? Of course, we could say that was the stones they borrowed from the Egyptians. It's possible. But in any event, different stones were placed in this breastplate. Again, how many? 12. Why 12? Why 12? Why 12? So it says in verse 21, and the stone shall be according to the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet, everyone according to his name they shall be. In other words, for what purpose? We should have a memory of the 12 tribes. Isn't one enough? We need 2 of them to remind us about the 12 tribes or the 12 sons of Jacob. I don't have a Siddur, if you just bring me the Siddur. Says the Zohar, that is not the reason the Torah is telling us that we should become acquainted with the 12 stones of Jacob, or become acquainted with the 12 tribes, etc. No. Kulam Yud Beit Gvulim Elyonim, Dahani Yud Beit Sidufei Havaya, Shehi Sod Chesed Gvur Teferet Malchut, Shebchol Echad Gimel Kavim, Vehem Yud Bet. Kulam Heim Besod Shiftei Bnei Yisrael. What we are learning here is the same way as the Kohen was able to control the entire cosmos, says the Zohar. In other words, when we say control the cosmos, meaning there was nothing in the cosmos, ayin hara, fragmentation, disease, mishap, accidents, all of these things that exist in the world. Accidents don't happen. The idea of accidents exists for us. Everyone is familiar that accidents happen. There is a statistic, they say. Everyone is going to be part of that statistic. The only question is, of course, it'll never be me. It's always going to be somebody else. That's one way of looking at statistics. But there is such a thing called statistics. They're all going at the same time.
That's why it takes more than 3 years.
What?
Wasting a year years.
What's that?
Wasting a year turning pages.
The religious paying homage.
Right. All right. Well, at least all over the world they'll have the flavor of changing cassettes. All right. Says the Zohar. You know what this is talking about? The Yud Beit Shiftei Bnei Yisrael, Heim Gamkein Besod Yud Beit Surufei Habaya, Hamushpoim El HaMalchut. The same way as Aharon, a Kohen, could control the cosmos, and that the Jews never got sick, never had accidents. We don't read of that in the Torah. The only thing it couldn't control is the evil of the Jew. Always complaining about what's happening, never satisfied. That it could not do for the Jew. That was left to him, and him within him himself, to be able to correct what he had to correct. But any external conditions, any external forces that could possibly influence their welfare in every aspect was controlled by the ephod and the choshen. How was it controlled? Says the Zohar, the internal energy intelligence of these 12, both on the level of Malchut and on the level of Zeir Anpin, by the 12 combinations of the Yud Kei Vav Kei and the Aleph Kei Yud Kei. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the prayer on Rosh Chodesh, which we do every month, know that we are taking advantage of the Kohen. Because on page 305 in this particular Siddur, we have 12 combinations of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. You can have 12. Of the 4 letters, you can have 12 totally different combinations. Each combination, which is stated in the Tikkunei Zohar, will control the negative influence of a particular month, because that was the power, says the Zohar. It doesn't say so in the Torah. When you read it, like someone told me tonight, this was the one part, in fact, that when he came to, he also passed it over, because who's interested in clothing? These 12 had an internal energy. That means the stones, each stone has an internal energy of itself. Each stone has a particular power. What was the particular power? One of the combinations of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because, and why were there 12? Why were there 12? Because the sons of Jacob I mean, I had to remember. Remember we said Lizikaron? No. It would be everlasting for the Jew of today. That if he, in a very limited sense, meaning he didn't have the Urim V'Tumim, that was so blatant like a neon sign. It was a computerized neon sign. You saw it working right in front of your eyes. The answers and everything came on what to do so as not to fall into traps, not to fall into mishaps, disease, and whatever. That was the direction of the Urim V'Tumim. We don't have that today. But we have something that directed and that activated those stones and the onyx on the ephod, which consisted of the Tetragrammaton and its 12 variant configurations, which we do every Rosh Chodesh for that reason. So in other words, when we read this Parsha, this coming Shabbat, we will be concerned about what? How we are going to get not only, that's the advantage of this particular Shabbat, not only as we generally do on Rosh Chodesh, we have the advantage, if you know, which we do here, of connecting with the particular configuration of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, of the Tetragrammaton, which would protect us for that particular month. We now can get a configuration of the totality of the whole month. The totality of the whole month, plus all the other 11 months combined.
That's why it comes out of the dark.
Which leads me into Adar. That's right. There's something peculiar about Adar, beside Purim. Because we always ask the question, Misha Nichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha. Because of what happened? Purim happened. We know that the holiday does not answer for us the cause. A holiday is a result of something of a metaphysical nature. In everything, you must always go back to the cause. Never look at the physical indication. Physical indication is a ploy. It's a trap. If you can't go back beyond the physical manifestation, you're caught up in this trap of the physical realm, which is fragmentation and every other aspect of non-continuity. On Adar, we also do a funny thing. We do not take, like here, if you will notice, each month has its particular configuration. Comes Adar, we are told, when it comes to Adar, we should meditate on all of the 12 configurations. It's in this Siddur. If anyone wants a photostat, I guess they can get it. All of the 12 configurations that will assist us in tackling all of the 12 months and all of its negative energy intelligences that exist in this universe. A particular benefit in Adar. Now, what made Adar so special? Just the Persians? No. As much credit as I want to give to the Persians, it's not them. Not them. They were the result. They were lucky, let's say, but I don't say that's an answer either. They were lucky to have happened to be there, right? Also not correct. What is so special about Adar? And why is this red in Adar? And why do we say this month, Misha Nichnas Adar, Mabim B'Simcha? Because we know that there is another holiday. Well, let me first say, for those of you who do not know which planet rules over, which planet, according to Avraham Avinu, rules over the month of Adar, the Hebrew month of Adar, Pisces, fish, is Jupiter. Jupiter. But we also know that the planet Jupiter controls and rules over the Hebrew month of Kislev. So the question is, and we once discussed it I believe on Hanukkah, I think so, why should we not exclaim, Misha Nechnas Kislev, Marbim B'Simcha? But the sages in the Talmud, as well as in the Zohar, did not say Misha Nechnas Kislev, Marbim B'Simcha. You're supposed to increase Marbim B'Simcha. We're supposed to increase ourselves with Simcha. Why not? What about Chanukah? So there is something peculiar about Adar that does not exist. That does not exist on Hanukkah. What is it briefly stated? And we do not read in Kislev. In Kislev we have one reading, one configuration of the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and that's all. That's the one during the prayer on Rosh Chodesh that we recite. Not all 12. Not all 12. There is something special about Adar. Who brought the word Adar into the Hebrew language? Who brought the month of Adar, the Hebrew month of Adar, into the Hebrew nation? Where did it come from? Where is it first mentioned? Where is it first mentioned? In the Sefer Yetzirah of Avraham Avinu. In other words, it wasn't a name they happened to just choose, because we know that every single Hebrew month is not called by that name because you got to give the baby a name. So you've got to call it something. That's not what Avraham Avinu had in mind. What Avraham Avinu had in mind when he called or addressed a particular month, he wanted to provide us with clues about what the month is all about. He was giving us a complete teaching by one word, whether it be Kislev, Adar, Tishrei. Every Hebrew month is not like the months based on the solar system according to the Gregorian calendar or even according to the Muslim calendar. We have a unique calendar. We have a lunar-solar calendar, which is explained in the Star Connection, so it would be superfluous for me to go into that. We have a unique calendar. The reason we have a unique calendar is not because we had to call the month some name, so we chose that name. We have to choose a name. Never. Never. Avraham Avinu wouldn't spend time on just providing us with names. What he was providing us with is a support system by which we can become cognizant of what's going on in that particular month, connect with the energies of that month, and therefore create the security shields we want to create. Adar, where does it come from? Where does it come from? Adar in Aramaic means the spine of a fish. Adirta. Adirta. Spine. What does it have to do? What does it have to do with the spine of a fish? Who rules over this month? Yosef. Yosef, the son of Yaakov.
Pisces. Fish, Pisces.
In other words, we were immediately provided with a clue as to what this month is about. There's a story in the Torah which sounds nice, which seems to have no significance. Where did they take the bones of Yosef when he died? What did they do with his bones? What's that? Put it into the Nile River. When Moshe was born, where did they put him? Into the river. No other place to put him. Why in the river? I mean, hide him somewhere else. That is again, a concealment. As I say, the Bible is a complete cosmic code. You read it, says the Zohar, unfortunately, you practically understand nothing. This is not my words, this is the words of the Zohar. Because it's so coded, it is so coded, that the Zohar says that Rabbi Shimon said he had many friends that he knew could write a better Chumash than the Chumash itself. If that's all the Chumash, if that's all that the Torah wanted to reveal for us, no. We know that Moshe is a Pisces. How do we know Moshe is a Pisces? Because we know all tzaddikim that die on a particular day were also born on that day, and that was Haman's mistake. The reason he chose the month to Chas v'shalom destroy the Jews was the month of Adar. Why? Because he knew that the Jews had received such a lack in the cosmos for them. Their leader, gone, creates a vacuum. Vacuum is lack. Vacuum creates fragmentation. What he also forgot was that he was born that day.
Moshe Rabbeinu was born Zion Adar and
Zion Adar, and he died in Zion Adar. Zion Adar, he came into the world and passed out this world. Yosef HaTzadik, the same thing. Yosef is called Yesod. He is the foundation. He is the spine, incidentally, in Hebrew is also called Yesod. It's the foundation of the whole body. It is physically the transmitter for all of the neurons, for all of the messages of the brain. It goes through, says the Zohar, and I think medical science agrees, through the spine.
What's Yosef's your side?
What's that?
What's Yosef's your side? When is his death date?
For whatever reason, it is not mentioned.
How do we know he's a Pisces?
Oh, because of the water. The Zohar says. Because what's this business of the water? I mean, he was buried. Why did they have to bury him in the water? To wait until... In fact, he was the one that when the sea saw the coffin of Yosef, it split.
To connect Chesed with your son.
What?
To connect Chesed with your son.
Because Dag, Pisces, is connected with Yesod. It is the 6th month, so therefore it is Yesod. Now, what is so special? What is so special? Why did Avraham Avinu have to give us that name? So I told you what the clue was. In Aramaic, only in Aramaic, for those of you who know Aramaic a little, it means the spine of a fish. Why the fish? So, we go to Yeshayahu, in chapter 11, when he's speaking about, and the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, speaking about the day of Mashiach. And the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf, and the young lion, and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them. That becomes very confusing. You know, the little child shall lead him. You know what I'm referring to? But it comes from Yeshayahu, right? And then it says, Lo yareo v'lo yashchitu b'chol ha'kodshi. There shall be no destruction, no one shall hurt each other in all my holy mountain, which means there'll be a complete security shield for the entire world. No misfortune, no misadventure, no fragmentation, no accidents. Why? For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, which is not right here in this particular Zohar, but the Zohar says that in the age of Aquarius, or referring to Adar, Kimala ha'aretz, Kimala ha'aretz day et Hashem, for the whole world shall be full of knowledge. And in Jeremiah it says, no longer shall there be the necessity of a teacher. All the rabbis will be out of a job. And then, as the waters cover the sea, as the waters cover the sea. Listen what it says. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. What's the connection? What is the connection? Like Mashiach has to do something with Pisces, as the water covers the sea. Covers the sea. Says the Zohar and many other commentators, referring to like the fish. On this particular month, first of all, we have an answer to why Misha Nichnas Adar Ma'abim B'Simcha, because this month, and whatever happened in this month, brought and will bring the revelation of the knowledge of the Lord. And we know that what happened, which we discussed last Purim, what happened in Persia, was Daniel with Mordechai brought back the Zohar, the teaching of the Zohar. Brought back the teaching of the Zohar. That knowledge provided such a security shield that, like the fish, says the Talmud and the Zohar, there is only one, because what does it mean, Kamayim Liyam Mechasim? There is only one entity in this universe that is not affected by Ayin Hara. I stated on many occasions, the Talmud says 99%, not 98, 99% of all people that die due to Ayin Hara. 99. That is the culprit. 99% of everything that goes wrong when a person has an accident is because a vacuum was created, an Ayin Hara came in, and if he died in that accident, Ayin Hara. In Adar, says Yeshayahu, meaning since the fish are likened to the aspect where there is no Ayin Hara in fish, because they are covered. They are covered. What does it mean they are covered? Mayim. For those of you who have learned what is Mayim, Mayim is Hesed. Mayim is Michael. Mayim is Michael. In the month of Pisces, there is an automatic covering and protection of the universe against adverse cosmic negative energy intelligences. That's the force. That is the force of Adar. That's why it's called Pisces. Ask someone why it's called Pisces. And that's why Yeshayahu says, he likens the time of Mashiach. When there is knowledge, then there is no Ayin Hara. When is that? When the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and so on and so forth. In other words, without the knowledge, we cannot accomplish the removal of misfortune. What is Mashiach? What does Mashiach represent? Continuity. No fragmentation. Therefore, they gave it the name of Pisces. And Moshe and Yosef. Moshe and Yosef. Yosef, as we know, is the ingathering. Why was he called Yosef? Because he is Firat Yesod. He is foundation. Likened to the foundation, the spine of the fish. That with Yesod, when you have Yesod hovering, that energy intelligence called Yesod or Yosef, when that is present, nothing can happen. So when we ask the question, what's so special about Adar? And what brought Purim? Do we celebrate and we say Misha Nichnas Adar Mabim B'Simcha because Purim happened? No, that is not the reason. The reason Misha Nichnas Adar Mabim B'Simcha because this is a month that if we connect properly, we can avoid the one fatality that is the cause and root of all fatalities. Ayin Hara. Ayin Hara. The month of fishes. Because the fish has no shlita. There is no dominion of Ayin Hara over fish. And therefore it says, Kamayim layam mechasim. The water, chesed, is that protection. And therefore, only in this month of Adar, and therefore it was called Adar, and therefore it is also called Dag. Also called Dag. The question is, why is it called Dagim? In Hebrew, actually, it's called fishes, in plural. No Hebrew month is referred to by its plural, except Gemini. Except Gemini. Except Gemini. But twins means two, automatically. Fish, if I said fish, I could be speaking about one. Why would I have to talk about two? When I talk about twins, I must, of necessity, refer to two. So that's the reason why it says tumim, plural, because you're talking about twins. But fish, why can't I just say it's the month of the fish? Of the fish. Like it's the month of the crab, Cancer, that we discussed when Cancer begins. In any case, no matter who contracts it, we know when he contracts it. And we know when he should beware of not contracting it. The knowledge. Why does it say dagim? Why does it say plural? There's no reason for it. Yet it is referred to as dagim in the plural. Because, as you know, there are two Adars. There are two Adars. Adar Aleph, sometimes, and Adar Bet. In other words, every 19 years, in order, and this is why it comes out just before Pesach, but time does not permit it. But I just want to say the reason that we have Adar. Adar is, its numerical value is 205. Resh is 200. Aleph is 1. Dalet is 4. You have 205. With the 2 months, with this being its plurality, if you add 2 more, you have 207. And we all know what 207 means. The power of Adar and the power that the Persians had that time in Persia was they knew how to tap the cosmos of Adar. Raz, 207 is secret. Raz, secret. But also, having the same numerical value of 207 is or, light. Aleph, Vav, Resh is also 207. To indicate to us that why is it Misha Nichnas Adar Mabim B'Simcha? Why we should be so joyous? Why we should be joyous? How many people are really walking around so full of joy because it's the month of Adar? It's because they don't know how to tap that energy. They don't know how to do this shiruf. They don't know how to connect to what's going on. Is it any wonder that not that many Jews are that happy? But Purim happened not because, and the happiness and contentment that is referred to by the Talmud of Misha Nichnas Adar Mabim B'Simcha is not because Purim happened. It was because of the month of Adar that Purim happened in the first place. In other words, Purim was not the cause. The month of Adar is the cause. That means today, why should we celebrate Purim? Great. The Jews once were saved. Take a look at us today. Take a look at us in 1933 and 1942. Should we celebrate Purim? What's the joy? How could anyone tell that concentration inmate in Germany, Misha Nichnas Adar Mabim B'Simcha? Let's face it. What does that mean for him? Sure, the Jews once had it great. But look at us today. That was not the reason of Misha Nichnas Adam Abim Simcha, because the Jews once had a victory. The Jews in Persia brought Mashiach because they knew how to tap the consciousness of what he brought back, Daniel and Mordechai. They knew that there was a particular power to connect with in this particular month. No ayin hara. No ayin hara. When you don't have that, nothing can happen.
No human ayin hara or no cosmic ayin hara?
No human or cosmic ayin hara. It is the fish. We are then, and we can be then, like the fish. And the waters cover us up. What covers us up? What is water? Michael. And that's why it's so appropriate with the order Vitumim and with the clothing and everything. Clothing. We can enclothe ourselves, bathe ourselves.
We don't need it this month.
Well,
Like a mikveh.
like a mikveh. That's why the mikveh. We must enclothe ourselves completely in the water. And B'ezrat Hashem, I'll conclude that we completed our mikveh in Adar, which we had no idea when it would be completed. But Baruch Hashem, today we completed it. Baruch Hashem. Chag Sameach to everybody. Good night.
Which part?